NBT Nation, good morning. Saturday morning pop up live here at NBT World Headquarters, NBT Studios. Had some thoughts on my mind, wanted to share with you, NBT Nation. Now, we talk about these live streams. Got an entire library of live streams here under the No NBT Live banner. Encourage you to go back and look at the entire catalog of NBT Lives. Lots of great resources in there going forwards into next year. Going to start scheduling these ahead of time, promoting these ahead of time, so I don't just randomly pop up in your feeds. That being said, NBT Live is a great way to take a learning concept and expand on it. Take it a little bit bigger than I can do in a singular post or a 2 to 3 minute video. We can kind of pull the thread a little bit more. And today's topic, what do I want to pull the thread on a little bit more in today's topic? Capabilities and capacities. That's right, NBT Nation. How does effective learning increase the capabilities and capacities of your team? How does effective training tied to a strategic learning plan help increase what your team is able to do and how much of it they can do? What they can do and how much of it they can do. It's a direct connection to effective training and ultimately an effective strategic learning plan. That's what we're going to unpack here. If you find this topic interesting, of course, please give it a thumbs up, leave me a note in the chat feed, or better yet, subscribe to the channel. Also, as we're doing a little bit of pluggage here, you can always visit noboringtraining.com for all sorts of tips, tricks, resources, free courses, free videos, and some products and services as well. So, NBT Nation, how does effective training increase the capabilities and capacities of your team? That's what we're going to unpack in just a second. Took a big sip of that. Now I'm going to cough here on an NBT Live. All right. Capabilities and capacities. Effective training should increase the capabilities and capacities of your team. And the capabilities and capacities are a direct pathway to increasing the excellence and energy in your firm. So when you think of a strategic learning plan, you have the mission, vision, values of the organization. You have a strategic learning plan, and then you have effective training built on NBT principles. Mission, vision, values, strategic learning plan, effective training. When you do all that well, you will inject excellence, energy, and alignment into your organization. The question rapidly becomes, well, hey, Adam, that's great, but we're doing all this training, we're pulling people offline. How does training as part of a strategic learning plan lead to excellence and energy? Well, one way to get there is by increasing the capabilities and capacities of your team. Let's break down what that means in tangible terms. So let's look at capacities first. Sorry, caught me off guard there. I thought I had a mistake on my slide. Let's look at capabilities. This is the beauty of NBT Live. Let's look at capabilities first. So what your team is able to do. In a lot of organizations, the plan to help somebody develop is to throw them in the role and hope they figure it out. Let's be honest. You throw people into a role and hope that they figure it out. Of course, over time, people have the ability to figure things out. Human beings are very resourceful and they get very good at streamlining things. You can speed up the process of figuring out how to do things by providing effective training instead of letting people guess. Here's something else that happens. You put somebody in a role and you say, go watch Charlie do this. Go shadow with Charlie. Charlie will tell you everything. Well, that's really great. Maybe Charlie is an awful employee and just covers it up. Maybe Charlie is a great employee, but doesn't know how to explain what makes them great. Maybe Charlie has developed some bad habits. So by counting on Charlie to do some training, shadowing, unstructured, no guidance, no real curriculum, no nothing. Just go watch Charlie. All those bad habits get passed along. or all those shortcuts get passed along. So whether people figure it out or whether they shadow, yeah, eventually they're going to get there, but it's going to take a lot longer to figure out how to do the job well and how to start doing the job better. So, capabilities, effective training as part of a strategic learning plan help people increase what they're able to do more quickly, more repeatably, more measurably. You have a defined curriculum. Here's what you need to learn during onboarding. Here's what you need to learn at the start of job skills training, kind of when you're first in the role. Here's an ongoing development pathway. That could be something really elaborate and complicated. That could be literally an Excel spreadsheet with just some different things mapped out. But when you have that lined out, you are going to speed up the process. You are going to make the process more standardized, and you are going to paint a roadmap so people can increase what they're able to do more quickly. And guess what happens when your team can do more and grow their skills and develop? Well, number one, they stay around. So you can increase retention. You can keep your talented people around longer. And all of the studies are clear. There's all sorts of stats. One of the ones that I commonly use here is that 40% of people are willing to switch jobs if their organization does not provide them any ongoing development or ongoing training opportunities. Can your organization survive 40% turnover and having to start all over again when 40%, if 40% of your team leaves? So, uh, increasing what people can do is there's a direct correlation to retention. There is a direct correlation to development pathways in terms of moving people into leadership roles. If you get really good at your job, then maybe you can increase your responsibilities over time, increase your impact on the organization, maybe move into more of a leadership role and expand that impact out over a greater area. Or if you're going to have people stay in an individual contributor role, they just get better. Now maybe they're moving up into the senior position or the team lead position, or just, level 3 instead of level 2, whatever, however that's measured in your organization. But you see people starting to develop and grow and take on more skills. Give you some practical examples. Have done a lot of sales training in the past, and you see young salespeople, they struggle to get the appointment. They struggle to get the conversation started. They struggle to find opportunities. And then once they get going a little bit, and they can get the appointment, they can get the conversation going, they can find the opportunities. Well, then guess what? How do you qualify the opportunity? How do you really understand that that's a good opportunity for your organization? Well, now they got to learn how to do that. Well, now they qualify the opportunity. You got to close the opportunity. You got to get the sale. Well, that's something else you need to learn. And then you get into negotiation, and then you get into bigger sales and more complicated sales and system sales, and what's the profitability of each sales. Every one of those milestones is something that you have to teach to increase the capability of that salesperson. Let's look at it from a manufacturing environment, somebody working in a production. Day one, they barely know how to clock in. Maybe after a couple weeks, couple months, something like that, they're doing the basic functions of the role because you show them how to do that using effective training based on NBT principles tied to your strategic learning plan. And now they get better in the role. And then guess what? Now they can maybe start to, instead of I make these 3 things, maybe they can increase, and now they're troubleshooting those 3 things, or they're learning how to make those 3 things if those 3 things look slightly differently. Like, let's say you've got the this product that they make, but then they got the XL version. Same damn product, it's just a little bigger, but there's some maybe different manufacturing techniques or manufacturing steps that are needed. Well, they got to learn that to increase their capabilities. And then over time, that individual, it becomes the senior person in the production cell. And then maybe they can go help other cells. Then maybe they go into a team lead, shift lead, foreman, for whatever. You get the idea of where I'm going here. But as people can do more and they grow in their capabilities, they take their existing skill set and they just keep refining it and getting better and better and better. That is a 100% direct pathway to excellence and energy. People want to grow and develop. They want to move up. The stats are all clear. And especially as you start looking at millennials and Gen Zs, I almost said Gen X, which is me. But if you look at millennials and Gen Zs, they want to grow and develop and move through the ranks and have increasing responsibilities and make more of an impact. And speaking very broadly and stereotypically, but if you give them more capabilities and now they can do what they do better, that increases their personal energy, that increases the quality with which they do their work, the speed with which they do their work. All of that leads direct pathway to excellence in energy. And along the way, as I mentioned, you get longer term retention, you get more output, you get more top line revenue stuff, etc. So, how do you get to excellence and energy? You increase people's capabilities, help them to do more in their given job skill, and you do that through effective training based on NBT principles. So you start to see how all this ties together. So capabilities. Let's talk capacities. I love this line. Teams that learn more can do more. It's amazing when you start giving people more ideas, more different approaches, more tools, more different ways to look at things. Set up a learning culture. You give them full-blown trainings. You give them short little explainer videos. You give them learning libraries. You have e-learning. You have guest lecturers. You share a YouTube video that you find online, whatever. Layered learning to get lots of information into the organization. Teams that learn more, guess what? They can do more, usually. Getting really good at doing this one particular thing, that's great. And if you have a bunch of individual contributors who can do their one thing and they do that one thing really great, that's awesome. But just like we talked about for capabilities, if you start increasing how much people can do, not only how well they do it, but how much of it they can do, guess what? That leads to excellence and energy. Imagine a team that takes on a new challenge because you pointed them in the direction through effective training. Imagine a team that looks at a business problem, but because you were training them on some subjects back here, when they get to this new problem, they say, hey, you know what? Maybe we could approach it this way instead of that way. Now you're getting some creativity, some innovation. Now they're tackling a new challenge. They're adding to their skill sets. They're thinking about things that maybe they had never thought about before, using tools that maybe they had never used before. Excuse me. You are increasing their capacity to do work. So instead of just coming in and doing this really well all day, every day, which is not bad. I mean, it's a good problem to have, right? But now instead of just doing this, they can expand how many thises they can do. You can give them new approaches, new idea, new technologies, new ways of thinking about things. You can help them to be more efficient. Maybe you start teaching some lean methodologies to help take a particular skill set and make that more effective. Maybe it's some creativity training that helps people think in new directions. Maybe it's leadership training. There's all sorts of different ways to kind of approach this. It all ties back to your strategic learning plan of where do we want to focus our training energy. There's all sorts of ways to do it, but you can increase the capacity of a team so that instead of just doing this amount of stuff, they can do that amount of stuff, which all leads, like I said, back to this excellence and energy idea. You give the team abilities to think in new directions, to go in new directions, to try new approaches, to kind of give them the tools and resources to expand. As human beings, we tend to not venture out of our comfort zones, not venture outside of what we're kind of already good at. That's not universal. Some people are always seeking new adventures, they're always seeking the next mountaintop. But in general, in a work setting, we tend to get into a rhythm and stay in that rhythm. But imagine if you could increase that rhythm, increase that frequency, increase that bandwidth through some effective training that increases the capacities of a given group. So, capabilities and capacities. Capabilities, how can you teach people how to do what they do better? And capabilities, how do you help them expand what they do and the reach of what they do? One angle of capacities is that now you have a team that, instead of we do this and this is all we do, and that what we do is fine, we do it really, really well, but we just sort of stay over here in our little silo of the world, our corporate world. When you start expanding a team's capacities, not only can they do more, but that focus tends to do this. It opens up. Think about doing some training inside your organization to help your teams understand how the organization fits together, how this team's activities affect that team's. Think of it in a hospital type setting. If facilities understands the needs of the nursing group, and if the nursing group understands the needs of the uh, cafeteria group, logistics maintenance group, uh, I'm running out of examples, but you see how those different groups all play a different role in the organization. But if you start teaching them how the organization works, maybe the facilities people can see different ways that they can help the nursing teams and the that structure. So think about how you can increase visibility across the organization as a way to increase the capacity of a given team. Now you might be thinking, okay, Adam, I get it. If you do effective training based on NBT principles, that training is tied to a strategic learning plan that affects mission, vision, values. I get that. When you do effective training, you get people with more capabilities and more capacities. I get that, but I'm still not following you on excellence and energy. Let me just boil it down as simple as I can. As people grow and develop and can do more and do more successfully, they feel more excited about coming to work. They feel more happy about themselves. They feel like they're making a contribution to the greater good. They feel like they're part of something bigger than themselves. They feel like the company cared enough to invest the time in giving them the training. And when they have some new shiny thing that they can do that's rewarding and energetic and exciting, and it really makes a difference, guess what? They're going to share it across the organization. They can do their jobs better. Their capabilities are increased. And doing a job better means you're going to increase the amount of excellence. And doing a job better means you get better performance reviews and higher raises and more compliments and more shout outs and credos and internal high fives. That leads directly to energy. Capacities. Well, how does that lead to excellence and energy? I got to tell you, coming to work every day in a corporate environment and you're just stuck in your little silo, it is so easy for workers to get stuck in that mindset of I just clock in, I clock out, and I don't care about any of the rest of this company. You start helping them expand their view out through some of these creativity, leadership, teaching about the organization, new ideas, new approaches, new technologies, things like that. Now, all of a sudden, they realize they are part of something bigger than themselves. They're not just a worker bee. They're not just a cog in the wheel. There's a real impact of what they do and how it affects everyone else in the organization, let alone your customers. That leads directly to, hey, you know what? What I do matters. What I do contributes. What I do actually means something. I'm not just punching a clock. Well, guess what? You get a bunch of workers, team contributors, middle managers, senior leaders, executive types who feel like they're really contributing some great thing. and they're able to do more and more and more and more and more. Not only do they get the dopamine hit of them being able to contribute on a deeper level and the attaboys and performance evaluations, they are now contributing to the organization on a much deeper level. So both on a personal level and an organizational level, you're seeing more excellence and more energy. Capabilities and capacities. That's a natural byproduct of effective corporate training. And when we start to look at what does that look like, it's the, like I said, energy, excellence, and outcomes. And I've already talked about energy and excellence, so I'm not going to continue to drone on there. How does that all lead to outcomes? Well, when you have people that stick around longer, you don't have the drag of turnover, the cost of having to replace people and retrain them and get them back up to speed and ramp back up over and over and over again. So less drag from turnover means more profit. You teach your sales teams how to perform at a higher level, they sell more. Now your revenue is going up. You teach your production teams how to produce more with better quality, more repeatability, more quickly, more efficiently. Guess what? Your profit is now going up. You teach your team safety and build a good strong safety culture. Now your bottom line is being impacted because you're not only protecting your workforce, you're protecting your teams, but you're not getting those hits to the bottom line from regulatory impacts, legal impacts, litigation, what have you, let alone lost work time, workers comp, and all that kind of fun stuff. Teach your marketing teams how to create in a more structured, refined way, and how their marketing efforts tie directly to the organization. Now you're getting a direct hit on revenue as they are not just creating stuff for the sake of creating stuff, but they're doing it in concert with your sales teams and with a direct pathway to your sales teams because you did some training to teach them how things fit together. You're seeing people progress through the organization. And I mentioned this a little while ago. When you start helping people increase their capabilities and capacities, they tend to get promoted and they tend to move into leadership roles where their impact can be magnified across the organization. And what is the impact to your revenue and profit? What's your P&L statement going to look like when you have strong leadership? Effective leadership, leadership that really understands how the business works and really cares about your people. How is that going to impact your EBITDA at the end of the year? So I wanted to kind of wrap this NBT Live up with this idea of, yeah, we're talking about effective training. Yeah, we're talking about strategic learning plans and how effective training leads to more capabilities and capacities, which is a direct pathway to excellence and energy. And yeah, you do more training. But there's some real business outcomes that come from this that leaders probably care about. There's some direct pathways between energy, excellence, and alignment and business outcomes. There's direct pathways between increasing capabilities and capacities in a repeatable, measurable way that leads directly to business outcomes. And of course, if you do all this as part of a strategic learning plan, you guessed it, you can impact those top line metrics. So all of these pieces really start to fit together. And that's where you get this idea of strategic learning. And unfortunately, I'm realizing my picture of my lovely face is directly over top of my graphic, but I think you'll get the idea here. The where my face is mission, vision, values. That's really what you want to instill inside your organization and achieve and drive. You have strategic learning plans that are tied to that mission, vision, values. And then, of course, you execute your training based on no boring training principles. When you do all that, you interject excellence, alignment, and energy into your organization. And a great way to get more excellence and energy is to increase the capabilities and capacities of your team. So, wanted to spend some time on that, NBT Nation. Let me know what you think. Leave me some comments, whether you're watching this in real time or whether you're watching on the playback. What are your thoughts on this idea of capabilities and capacities that effective corporate training, oops, effective corporate training will increase the capabilities and capacities, and there is a direct pathway from capabilities and capacities to excellence, energy, and alignment to ultimately increase business outcomes on top line metrics: revenue, profit, net promoter score, and talent retention. You can do all that by having a strategic learning plan that's tied to your mission, vision, values, and having the execution of that strategic learning plan based on no boring training principles. It's all pretty straightforward stuff, right? When we get busy with our day-to-day lives, though, we kind of lose sight of this. When we get busy, focused solely on output and solely on how many widgets did we ship and how many patients did we treat, how many marketing pieces did we produce, how many sales, those are all important metrics. Don't get me wrong. We should be focused on that. But that's the outcome. The input is what I'm talking about. And sometimes we forget the input piece when we're really, really focused on the output. So hopefully this NBT Live helped you unpack all of that. Capabilities and capacities. Effective training should increase capabilities and capacities. And for you trainers out there, are you measuring the increase in capabilities and capacities because of your training? Do you have structures in place to measure capabilities and capacities? Do you have networks with the leadership of the groups that you're training to be able to get feedback, whether it be anecdotal or qualitative, that people's capabilities and capacities are in fact increasing? Because if they're not, you are not putting out effective training. Hate to break it to you. So you should, trainers, be sure that you are measuring, evaluating, getting some sense of whether you're making an impact in these areas. Capabilities and capacities are really easy to measure. Excellence, energy, alignment, that gets a little bit harder to measure, right? But capabilities and capacities, we should have measurements associated with our training that helps us validate that we are in fact doing that. There you have it, NBT Nation. Effective training will increase capabilities and capacities of your team. Will do it far more efficiently, repeatably, and measurably than just throwing people into the job and hoping they figure it out, or just uncontrolled shadowing. You will then have people that grow, develop, increase, promote, magnify. By doing that, you interject excellence and energy into your firms. And that is a one-to-one direct pathway to moving those top line metrics. Let me know what you think. Leave me some comments down below. Like, comment, subscribe, all that kind of fun stuff. And don't forget to visit noboringtraining.com. Thanks, NBT Nation.